Today we're going to do a review on our 2018 JLU. We bought it late in 18. It's got 109,000 miles on it. We're going to go over our thoughts on it, things that has gone wrong, the things we think are right, and would we do it again. Now the JLs had improved axles in them. Even the old Dana 30 was a much stronger axle in the front, and in the rear it was a factory Dana 44. Now we had to have our spider gear replaced in our factory axle, and that was only at about 40,000 miles. And Duke and I would appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel if you like this video. We're trying to get to 10,000 this year. We'd appreciate your help. He gets paid in bones, by the way. It helps him too. Yeah. We were doing a video on maintenance for the rear end, and when I pulled the plug out for the drain, a piece of the spider gear came out, and that cost us about 6 weeks worth of downtime as I was trying to get parts for the JLs in. But the one thing nice about the JL axles and the way this vehicle is set up is that you can run 35s on stock axle. Even with the Sport, this is a Sport S, you can fit the 35s under there. You're not going to get a whole lot of articulation, but they'll go in there. And on the Rubicons, there's 2 inches more clearance in those same fenders, and they will swap. And the verdict is still out about the aluminum knuckles. And any of the mods you see on the Jeep, they're all on the channel. We're not going to cover the mods, just the factory stuff. Even the stuff that's factory that we might have changed. Now our JL had the same issues that most of the early JLs had. The aluminum hood and the aluminum doors all had a corrosion or whatever you want to call it issue, where we got a lot of bubbling around the paint, around the hinges, on the hinge. Good boy. And it had to be repainted. And we had to fight that one a little bit because we was rolling up on 90,000 miles at that point. So luckily Jeep decided to paint the hood, doors on both sides. Now I have heard cases where people have had to do that more than once. It was kind of nice because we had quite a bit of pinstriping on it, and it kind of cleaned the slate a little bit as we got close to the 100,000 mile mark. But if you're seeing that little bubble, now it's hard to see since it's black, but you'll see like a bubble in the paint that runs around the door here or on the hinges. Ours even had some bubbling along the edge of the hood here. Get it up there quick so you can get it repainted. Now quite a few of the JLs had weld issues on the frame. Luckily we didn't have any of those issues on ours. He absolutely loves it when we bring him out here. I wish I could just let him run. Now quite a few of them had some other issues in the engine. So we struggled for about 8 months, if not longer, with cam phaser issues. But it masked itself through one of the big nemesis of the JL, the dreaded 2-battery system. Now our JL kept giving us the dreaded charging system errors, and we fought that nonstop. You know, we've changed the battery twice in this vehicle, the little auxiliary battery. Once we went through the maze from the top, and then talking with one of our good friends from the Jeep Talk Show, he turned me on the way to go in from the bottom. And we've changed them both. Unfortunately, neither one of them was the batteries. Now the JLs had a very complex charging system. So I was having more charging issues, and that's when we found out. On older vehicles, we would always put everything right on the lug. You can see on the positive and the negative side here. Well, I was having tons of issues because there's a continuous feedback loop on a JL. And it's hard to see, but there's a body bolt down here that you have to run all your stuff to, because if anything is using power continuously, it'll throw errors out, and it killed one of the batteries. And unfortunately, any kind of error at all trips the charging system. Whether it's engine codes or any kind of glitch, you'll get the charging error. So naturally you think, I got a charging system issue. Even the dealer, the first time we had an issue, wanted to charge me $300 to change that battery. Now these have the variable valve timing in them, and they have cam phasers. Don't pretend to know 100% what the cam phaser does. But we were having issues with the cam phaser internally, and that was tripping errors with the battery and giving us that error, leading us to think it was a charging system. Now what you got to remember is early 18, that was all new to the dealers also. Problem with the charging errors are, the minute you turn it off, it resets itself. So if you do end up running into that issue, you have to take it in. While it's running, they can read the codes for you. The minute you shut it off, it goes away and you start all over. But the cam phasers were masking everything with that issue. So then we ran into, once that was done, then the external sensors for the cam phasers, it's what they tell me, I don't pretend to be an expert at that, was tripping it also. And I had to fight with Jeep to fix that one under the extended warranty. because we have been dealing with that issue for well over a year. Now with all that, I think the new Pentastar 3.6 is a far better engine than the older ones. Now this is a manual, and there was a recall for the pressure plate for this model. Now we elected not to do the recall because I plan on putting the center force clutch in, and their fix was not to replace the pressure plate that was exploding when it got hot and under higher RPMs, but it was to pull the power out of the engine, and I didn't want to be saddled with that later when I put a better clutch and better pressure plate in there. Now with the JL, they did a really nice job of leaning that window back more so it wasn't so vertical to help deflect rocks. Now I think the JL was a little better than the JK, but something about JL glass, it breaks with anything hitting it. Now you can get the Rhino glass and all of those, but factory glass, well, a lot to be desired. Jeep has done a great job of redoing the interior of this Jeep to give you some of the creature comforts, especially when you're going long distance. And the Freedom panels were a great addition to that. So just a couple levers and the panels pop out, and they even give you a bag to store them in the back. And unless you're under a really high pressure car wash, I've never had these leak. Until you get to this. Now I know it might be nitpicky. We don't put anything in our nets. It's trying to avoid this. For nothing that's been in there, those are darn near worthless. And that's all 4 doors. So I don't mind calling Jeep out when it's one of those what were you thinking moments, but they've also done a lot of things right with the JL. And a lot of that carried over into the JT also. And I think that other vehicles like the Bronco and all of those help push manufacturers like Jeep to make a better vehicle. So we should be praising that those came along as well, because that helps these to be a better vehicle. And would I do it again? Absolutely. We've went a ton of places in this Jeep. Duke and I have got to meet a lot of outstanding people, traveled all over this country in our Jeep. And I don't know of many other vehicles that would have withstood the amount of beating we've done to it in a trail, and then drive it 800 to 1,000 miles to get home. So I'll see you in a list of mods that we did to this Jeep here, and I'll see you there.